that psychological piece is like the most important factor in performance. The most. That just gets glossed over. Why? Because just people aren't knowledgeable enough to know how it's integrated. My name is Mark Uyeyama, and I've been in the field of performance for the last 20 plus years. My philosophy in the weight room, there really isn't one. It's a philosophy in how to prepare football players. It's a top-down tactical guidance model where everything starts with the tactics and works down from there. Obviously, the Super Bowl was a big deal. It's unlike anything else when you go to that game and the lead up to the game and then the game itself. And sometimes it's the small victories, helping guys get back from injuries, helping guys improve that were maybe on the practice squad that were able to make it up to the top 53. Just in terms of talking about psychology and the physical component of training, they go hand in hand because your psychological state is what drives every decision and action. When you're in the National Football League, you have the physical traits. They wouldn't be there otherwise. And so it's that part of the preparation and training that needs to be integrated into their plan and can either be the limiter or the amplifier to their success, right? You look at the top players in the league, they may not be the most gifted, say in a weight room or under a bar, but they can play football, and that's what matters most. But you definitely have to understand that your physical traits underpin your techniques and tactics and your psychological state, and they all go hand in hand. And so when you think about preparation, and you look at a cup analogy, you have to proportion. Everybody's different in terms of how much you pour into the cup. You don't want to pour too much because you got yourself a mess, but some guys need more psychological training. Some guys need less, that are just locked and loaded and calm, cool, collected. But everybody's different in terms of what proportion of the cup you fill with what, right? So the physical traits, trust me, those guys had of it. They wouldn't be there otherwise. But the amplifier could be your psychological state day to day. I'm a firm believer, like I was saying, when strength is at its highest, you don't want to be your weakest. And so we'll always constantly push to keep guys strong throughout the year. But how can they express that strength? That's key, right? So there's stuff you can do in the weight room, but how is that getting expressed in the angles and positions, like say when you're playing football? That's what matters most. So it's basically something that can, strength is definitely something that can help those areas. It's not the be-all and end-all because you have to be able to express it properly when you're playing football, but it definitely doesn't hurt, right? It definitely doesn't hurt. And just building the armor, you think about football, it's a very contact sport. You have to inoculate to contact, right? It's a collision sport, right? You have to have the armor to play day in, day out. You break down tactics, right? What is tactics? It's a decision coupled with action. What's a decision? That's your sensory processing, optical, tactile, and auditory. Relational processing, which is big picture, item specific, which is tunnel vision. Cognition and memory. Cognition is what you think, memory is what you're able to retain. Think about that. Football, right? It's communication, it's decision, it's execution, and a level of fitness to repeat. That's football. Why is tactics so important? Why? Think about it. In football, every 30 seconds, there's tactical intervention. Every 30 seconds, you're getting a different play, and I gotta listen to it, I gotta think about it, I gotta remember what that means to me, then I gotta go perform. We lose this, right? And this is why it's so important, especially at the level that I'm in the NFL. You have to be able to think, right? It's the biggest, baddest dude. If the NFL was about physical traits, Brock Lesnar would still be playing, right? Right? It's not just physical traits. You have to be right upstairs. You have to be able to self-regulate yourself. You can't be caught up in the moment. You look at any game where it's decisions are made, and you're just like, wow, what happened? Well, I'm gonna tell you this, that psychological piece is the most important factor in performance. The most. That just gets glossed over. Why? Because just people aren't knowledgeable enough to know how it's integrated, right? They try to throw you in a room and talk about flow state and get behind it, and do some sports psychology nonsense that has nothing to do with football, right? So it has to be integrated into it all. And if you look at the best players, like Tom Brady, man, lights out. Super Bowl, come on, man. Biggest stage, stone cold, killer, right? Like, he's got those traits. Because those physical traits that we talk about, very average at best, right? But it's all those other components that he's just got dialed in. And a lot of it is on the job training, right? He doesn't go sit with this, that, and the other. A lot of it's on the job training. He's experienced things. He's made a lot of mistakes. He's learned from them, right? But it's more to it, especially in the NFL. It's nuance and detail, right? The best players. That's why they're the best. And to be honest with you, there's guys up in the box watching that when they see that, they're like, we're going at that dude. We're coming right at that dude. Why? Because the guy's unglued. What happens when guys gets upregulated, right? Prefrontal cortex, frustrated, anger, anxiety, worry, doubt, any negative emotion goes up, your ability to think and remember shit and your ability to move. It affects how you move because you tighten up, right? You tighten up. We're going after that dude. And then sometimes they'll take a player and literally a fresh player on the sidelines and just run him down the sidelines just to tire him out a little bit or piss him off. And then they'll come right back at him. You know what I'm saying? There's strategy behind that too, right? Hey, we know this guy gets pissed off if you do things. Boom, start a little fight with him and actually run like a fade down the field. Guy's hauling ass, tired, next play. All right, now we got him. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of chess to it like that.
See on TV is a slant over the middle.
Guy, yeah, you don't know. Exactly. There's a lot of that strategy behind it, which is pretty, it's pretty cool. You got to be in tune to that. But if you discount it, you're making a mistake. Okay? I was at the Super Bowl in 2012 with the 49ers, and we literally did not take that into consideration. How important the psychology would be, because we got to that stage and you're looking around like this and there's Denzel Washington and Beyonce and you're like, whoa, like there's an influx of emotions for me, and I wasn't playing, right? I wasn't playing. It was a special deal, man. Like, it was almost like a dream. You're in the hotel lobby and you're seeing your parents, crowd of people, okay? Crowds of people, and you can see your parents like stand out. Like, it's like they like came out and you're just like, wow, this is a pretty cool deal. And it's unlike anything else. Then you get to the game, you're just like, oh geez, okay. First 15 plays, we're jumping offside, running the wrong plays. I'm just like, oh geez, this isn't good. 28-6, we're down. They took a kickoff down the field, and I'm like, I remember Coach Harbaugh says to me, he said, Uy, were we warmed up enough? I go, he obviously was, right? The guy housed it like 110 yards. Well, in the NFL, at halftime, you don't get to get on the field and re-warm up because it's a halftime event. You literally are sitting in the locker room for like an hour, 30, 40 minutes. You come out and it's like, okay, we got to play again, right? You're just the show. They don't care. Get out there. The guy ran it 110 yards on us. I was like, oh, geez. Then what happened? The lights came out in the stadium, and everybody was like, oh, what's going on here? Well, we managed to settle down a little bit and made it a game. We just didn't have enough time to finish it out. And until you've gone through one of those things, it's hard to explain, because you don't think it's going to get the best of you. And if I know now, obviously, because I've trained in Mark can, with the psychology part of it, I know how important that is. I've trained myself, man. I literally have to be able to, like James talks about a cloud, right? I can stare at it, I can watch it go, or I can follow it. I choose now how to interpret anything. I wasn't there back then. And that's why it's such a superpower, like, of your interpretation of how you interpret anything. You have a choice. It's such a powerful choice, and it could be nothing. Like, it didn't have to be. And I'll tell you this, I learned the mistake with the Niners, and then when I went to the Vikings, I shared a lot of these things with that experience. And we played the Saints the one year, and to the man, like, guys were coming out to me like they just were interpreting it in their favor. So all the external stuff was just external stuff, and they had, didn't affect them. And so it shows you how important that is. And even like the day and age we're in now, like with the COVID and all this stuff, there's no law of nature that says you got to act a certain way to it, right? That doesn't mean you discount it, right? I'm not licking bus stops and doing all nonsense, right? But I'm being just diligent and objective and not letting it get the best of me, because it doesn't serve me to think any way else. So I've implemented the Sling Shot strategically. First off, I utilize it myself first and foremost, and then from there it would be any special circumstance with guys that are injured or guys that were doing extra work, just so I can grasp any of the nuance and detail that had to happen in terms of the implementation. From there, I transition more into the warm-ups that we do in a team setting, because in the NFL it's time's a premium and you want to make sure that things are smooth. After they get done doing a variation in the warm-up, then I'll integrate it into the workout as an auxiliary, then throw it in from a standpoint of the primary exercises, and that's kind of the progression I use. All your various push-up progressions, right? Maybe a guy's got a little bit of a bite during a dip or a pressing motion or what have you, right? Extra work on a Friday, gun show day where guys are blowing up the triceps, you throw it in, right? Anything to kind of take the bite off of certain positions where inhibits guys to actually do the motion, and really they're on standby all the time to be utilized. And so there's no question, if something happens and guys aren't feeling it, you just throw them the slingshot and away you go, right? You're still able to implement what it is that you want to do without, having somebody in pain while they're doing it. The slingshot itself kind of teaches the groove as well, the appropriate path for a lot of guys. But again, like with all the different types of body types that you're dealing with, you kind of just get a feel of what feels right for these guys, and the feedback and that communication is important as well. With the slingshot, some guys carry it like, mid, some guys like to carry it high. Whatever that path is, or whatever that position is that they feel is best for them, that's what we're gonna do, and I'm really cognizant of that. And so from that standpoint, it's like any tool, right? How somebody utilizes it. Like I said from the beginning, what the tool was intended to be used for, that's why I want to use the product. It's not like I'm making something up. That's how I want it to be used. Their leverage and their limbs aren't in their favor, right? They got to carry things a further distance, but I'm a firm believer in being able to still do those things no matter how tall or how big or what have you. We can always make tweaks. We can widen a grip. We can, I'm big into that. And so, as much as that is a disadvantage, trust me, that's an advantage when they step on the field to have those long limbs. As it relates to slingshot in terms of improvements, you'd be surprised, like with football players, they're very strong, like in the bottom explosively. At the top end, they really lack some strength. And if you look at the curves, the strength curves here, the slingshot itself, it's going to obviously gives you that little bit of a jump start, but at the end, you're still having to lock out. I'm telling you right now, this tricep strength and lockout strength of most of the NFL players isn't as good as you would think it is. They can let it fly initially, but that top end is an area in which they need to work. I can guarantee, like, guys can 4-board and 5-board press normally, like lifters and whatnot, can do more than they can bench. That's the opposite with these NFL guys because they're very explosive. They lack that finish in that top end, so this is another way in which the slingshot can be utilized to help that range. Yep. It's the opposite of what you think, because you think, okay, I can lock out more. Normally, guys that lift, we can lock out more, but these guys, no, they can't. They're not as strong at the top. Yeah, so, and to be honest, I probably, as it relates to bringing these products onto the field, I think Jesse came and watched one to practice. They are a staple out there on the field. Obviously, the hip circles were a staple in all the warm-ups. I know prior to, we always work back from what it is going to be asked of us to do. And from doing that, we got to ensure that we just have optimal tone, right? We're not just, putting hip circles on, running around for 3 minutes. No, we want the optimal tone so that when we do step on the field, that everything is primed and everything is ready to go. So we utilize them in the warm-ups, even during the game, you know, there'll be opportunities where guys, you know, are sitting on the bench for a certain period of time that got to kind of get the engine going a bit, where we'll implement things like that as well.